We are going to wait just another couple minutes, or maybe not two, but maybe just another minute, and let people sign on here. Thank you all for your patience. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jennifer Schlesinger. I'm the owner of Obscura Gallery in Santa Fe and an APAD member. And as an APAD board member, I am proud to present to you our talks today. Just so you know, the video is being recorded and we will also have it available on our website soon. APAD talks bring together prominent curators, artists, collectors, and writers to discuss thought-provoking ideas, new trends, and unique processes involved in the medium of photography. APAD talks starts conversations that lead to understanding, inspiration, and action. On behalf of all the members of APAD, welcome to today's talk in collaboration with Aperture, titled Myriam Boulos, What's Ours? Based in Beirut, Myriam Boulos, now a Magnum-nominee, has created a searing diaristic body of work portraying her friends, family, and her city's society with startling energy and intimacy. Boulos will be in conversation with the acclaimed writer Mona Atalaway, author of Headscarves and Hymens, Why the Middle East Needs a Sexual Revolution in 2015. And she is the founder of the newsletter Feminist Giant. Moderating the talk today will be Michael Famighetti, editor of the Aperture magazine. In 2013, he organized a relaunch and reconceptualization of the publication, which won a 2018 National Magazine Award for General Excellence. In addition to editing the magazine, Famighetti commissions and edits books for the Aperture Foundation, and his writing has appeared in numerous publications. He is a guest reviewer and speaker at many international festivals and institutions. He is currently a visiting critic at the Yale University School of Art. Just so you all know, we will have a Q&A at the end of this discussion, so please feel free to put your questions in the chat, and we will wait to address them until the very end. And now, please join me in welcoming our moderator, Michael Famighetti. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you all for being here this afternoon or this evening where you are. Myriam, I realize it's after 10 p.m. In Beirut. I'm Michael Famighetti. I'm the editor of Aperture. And for those of you who are not familiar with Aperture, the magazine was founded in 1952 by a group of artists, writers, and curators as a common ground for photography. Aperture today is a multi-platform publisher that unites the photography community in print, in person, and online. We're honored to be joined by photographer Myriam Boulos and writer Mona Atalaway for a conversation about Myriam's work, which is featured in the current issue of the magazine. Myriam Boulos was born in 1992 in Lebanon. At the age of 16, she began to use her camera to question Beirut, its people, and her place among them. She graduated with a master's degree in photography from Alba in 2015, and since then has been exhibited and published internationally, including incredible work made for Time magazine, which I think is maybe where I first encountered her work, though maybe I first saw it on Instagram. Myriam has an amazing Instagram feed that everyone should follow, but she's also been published in Vanity Fair, Aperture, Foam, and many other publications. And in 2021, she became a Magnum nominee. Malta Al-Tahawi is the founder and editor, as you just heard, of the newsletter Feminist Giant. Her first book, which has an amazing title, Headscarves and Hymens: Why the Middle East Needs a Sexual Revolution, was published in 2015 and targeted patriarchy in the Middle East and North Africa. Her second book, The 7 Necessary Sins for Women and Girls, published in 2019, took her disruption worldwide. Her commentary has appeared in media around the world, including in the New York Times, which I think is where I first encountered Mona's writing, and it was such a privilege to have her as a contributor for the magazine. This year, Aperture turns 70, because we were founded in 1952, as I said earlier, and the current issue of the magazine, which features Myriam's work, is titled Celebrations. And the title is actually a nod to a 1974 issue of the magazine. It's always fun to go back into Aperture's amazing archive. And the 70s were an especially rich and exciting moment for the magazine. But in that issue of the magazine, the editors noted that today there is a great need for emphasizing the climatic affirmations of life's events and feelings. So we kind of made an issue of the magazine that riffed on that idea. And so the issue considers how photographs envision holidays, ceremonies, and festivities, and allow us to seek euphoria or find catharsis in the everyday. And in Celebrations, we were very privileged to publish Myriam Boulos's amazing body of work portraying her friends and family and queer community in her city of Beirut. That series is titled What's Ours, and it casts an unflinching eye on the revolution that began in Lebanon in 2019 with protests against corruption and government austerity, as well as the aftermath of the devastating port explosion in August of 2020. Of her approach to photography, Boulos states, and I love this quote, "It's more of a need than a choice. I obsess about things, and I don't know how to deal with these obsessions in any other way but photography." So I look forward to hearing more about that idea in this conversation with Mona. I just want to mention that Aperture is a not-for-profit organization, and the magazine is supported by the Kanakia Foundation, by John Stryker and Slobodan Rangelovich, and by Thomas and Susan Dunn. Further generous support is provided by the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, and Aperture's programs are made possible in part by the New York State Council on the Arts. But the easiest, and I would say the most pleasurable way to support Aperture is to simply subscribe to the magazine or buy individual issues where you can learn more about photographers such as Myriam Boulos. And you can go to aperture.org to do so. There will be a Q&A at the end, so please put your questions in the chat. And now I'd like to hand it over to Mona for her conversation with Myriam. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jennifer and Michael. And hello, everyone. Welcome to you wherever you are. My name is Mona Al-Tahawi, as you just heard. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I begin this, as I begin everything, with my declaration of faith: fuck the patriarchy, which I think is a statement that we will probably come back to several times in our conversation. But before I begin this conversation that I'm really excited about with Myriam, I just want to give you an idea of the impact of Myriam's art on me. Because when Michael and Aperture magazine wrote to me and asked me if I would write an essay about Myriam's stunning work, I saw, first of all, the title, What is Ours? And then I saw her incredible photography. And I was delighted, elated, thrilled, and so excited to be able to write about this incredible body of work, and especially to wrestle with this question, which I'm going to start the conversation with Myriam with, this question, what is ours? Because for me as an Egyptian, it has now been 12 years since our revolution in Egypt. It all began in Tunisia, of course, in December of 2010. And I've thought often about this question, you know, who does the revolution belong to? And I know from the conversation that I had several weeks ago with Myriam to prepare for my essay, and through reading her writing about her work, Myriam too wrestles with that question, because she says in her writing, there was a revolution happening in my country, there was a revolution happening in me. So let's start with that, Myriam. Who does the revolution belong to? What is ours?
Wow. I just want to say thank you again to APAD and Aperture, Michael, and of course, Mona. Um, that's a huge question to start with because actually, like, I do photography because there are all these things in me that I do not know how to express with words, and I think that a huge part of my work tackles these questions and tries to find answers and to explore this question. But yeah, so the question was, what's ours literally, or who? Yeah, yeah. I think that it's it's supposed to be everything starting with our bodies and our streets and our country. It's supposed to be our countries too, but unfortunately, it's not. So I think that it's a struggle that we both have in common. And yeah, I think that the best way to answer is to share screen and start going through the work. I think it will answer slowly,
Mhm.
maybe in some ways.
Mhm. No, I'm excited that you're sharing your screen and showing those who've joined us your incredible photography, because as you say, you answer this huge, humongous question that I've put to you.
I tried to.
Through, and here's your screen now, and I think that one of the most powerful things about your work is that you've gone to the streets and you've brought the body into the street and you've made us ask, what is that relationship between the body and the revolution? So do you want to
Yeah.
start leading us through your work with what you've written here and then some images as well that begin to nudge at that question?
Yes, actually, I think that some answers come before the revolution. A lot of answers come before the revolution in my work. Um, so I'm gonna start with the first project I ever worked on. It's night shifts. So I took these images when I was 21 as a young woman discovering our different places in society in Lebanon, in Beirut, more especially. Um, so yes, I mainly took these images in the nightlife of Beirut. For me, it was a context in which I could explore this because for me, at night, like it's as if suddenly Beirut's social map would suddenly appear. So for the first years, I only took images at night until the revolution started. Um, and I always use a direct flash because it's a way of literally putting the light on things that are normalized and oppressed when they shouldn't be. And also with the black and white and the flash, um, there is this trick where through images we can make appear things that we don't really see like with the like normally with our eye, like with our human eyes. Yes.
I love this idea that you went and entered nightlife to show what isn't usually seen in the street, because I think because that really is what precedes the revolution. People taking whatever space that they can take
Exactly.
because they're excluded from daylight, they're excluded from
Exactly.
all of these platforms, but here are the people who who are saying, I am here, my body belongs to me. This is going to come up again and again, and look at me
Exactly.
now because I'm not allowed to be seen, or I am erased, or I am censored. And I love that about the power of your work.
Thank you. And I think I already told you this, I'm not sure, but I heard somewhere, and I still don't know where, someone said that if we if we didn't have the nightlife in general, like as human beings, we would all be in the streets protesting. Uh, yeah, and I think that this is a big answer in Beirut. And also, I think that the nightlife in Beirut, it's a way of saying like it's linked to the uncertainty of the situation. It's a way of realizing that we are present, we are here, like we are living here and now. And yeah, I think that also this brings us to something that's important in both of our works, I think, and it's also one of my answers, like the presence of the body, like we are present physically and yeah.
Yeah, one of the reasons that I called my book Why the Middle East Needs a Sexual Revolution is exactly to tackle that issue of, you know, my body, and I own my body and our bodies belong to us, which is why I love the title of your work, you know, what is ours? And here in these night scenes, because you've not gone into the daylight revolution yet, this is kind of like the underground, the kind of like the subground revolution, where everyone is so clear that this, look at me, look at my body, this is the one thing that I own, that will then erupt into the streets.
Yes, exactly. And actually something that in my work before the revolution, I used, because actually Beirut is socially very fragmented, and yeah, I used to work with particular fragments of the society. And this is something that changed with the revolution because suddenly we were all together in the streets. Yes. So this is another project talking about the body. Um, it's a project that I started in 2018, so a year before the revolution. And mainly what I'm saying is with words and not images, is that in a city based on destruction, I am looking for tenderness. And actually, I looked for tenderness in my images through intimacy of the bodies, because at this point, before the revolution, I was feeling like I was kind of in a dead end, and in my body and in my city, and I was feeling like this whole toxicity and normalized oppression was like it was coming in inside into our intimacy.
You know, you write at one point, when you describe your work, you say that when the revolution began, you realized that what was happening before was not normal, and that it was as if you were leaving an abusive relationship. And so I love this connection with tenderness, because you're finding through the tenderness that we're seeing here what is normal, that is outside of the tyranny and outside of that abuse. How can we be free through this intimacy and tenderness, and leave behind the oppression and the abuse that that oppression executes on our bodies?
Hmm. Exactly, and it's something that you expressed so well in the text you wrote about my work. I don't remember the sentence exactly, but you say that like once we start saying no, it's not, we say no to all the, I don't know how we pronounce this word in English, tyrant,
Yes,
all the
tyrant.
tyrants in our
Mhm,
life. Yeah,
mhm.
yeah,
That's the beauty of the revolution, that we start to say no to the state and the oppression of the state, but then that initial no, you know, translates into so many other areas. It starts to seep into
exactly.
so many other areas. We say no to the tyrant on the street corner, we say no to the tyrant in the bedroom, we say no to the tyrant in the nightclub, we say no to all the tyrants.
Exactly. Yes. And I'm starting to try to say no to the tyrant in me, but
Well,
it's
see, they've internalized, you know how we talk about internalizing patriarchy and internalizing misogyny and internalizing so much of that oppression that the revolution is supposed to take out of us. The biggest tyrant that we have to rise up against is that inside of us, in our minds and in our hearts. And I think that your photography, you know, I was delighted when we talked a few weeks ago and you told me that tenderness is the title of one of your projects, because, you know, I'm Egyptian, and the singer Kalsoum, and we talked about this, I believe that Kalsoum, and the power of Kalsoum is that she allows women to be powerful. Now I'm talking about cisgender women and men now, but we will queer all of these notions in a minute. But she gives cisgender women the ability to be powerful, and Kulthum allows men to be tender. And for me, this comes across beautifully in your photography. I think this is the revolution. You show powerful women and tender men, and this is where they all come together in this queer revolution that will then spill out onto the streets.
Yes. And back to the images, like a little parenthesis. I'm looking for tenderness in this project and in this series of images. And you clearly see that the images are kind of aggressive, like it's really looking for tenderness.
Yeah, it's a reminder that the other thing that I loved about writing about your work and why I was so excited to come across your work or to be introduced to it, especially that question, what is ours? Because much of my frustration about the revolutions in our various countries in the region was that the story of our countries was always told by the regimes in our countries and by Western media. So I was always wrestling with the gaze. Who looked at us and who portrayed us?
Yes.
You come and you disrupt that gaze, because it was usually a white Western gaze, often by white Western men. And then you come along, to queer that gaze, to make that gaze a woman, to make that gaze young, to make that gaze say, fuck you to the state and fuck you to the Western lens, and say, that gaze belongs to me. And that too is a revolution.
I'm not blushing, but
See, exactly this. This too is the revolution.
yeah, and I'm thinking out loud. I think that the big, like the contrast in the aesthetics of my images, like the contrast in the plasticity is linked to this. Like it's trying hard to say all of this.
And it works. I salute you, it works.
So, the big what's ours. Um, I'm gonna read some passages actually, and yeah, since I already found the words to express these things, I'm just gonna read some passages and then we continue. Yeah. Um, so this mainly says what we've been saying. So yeah, I can just skip this part. It's the introduction to the revolution, my approach to documenting it. Okay. So during the first days of the revolution, the proximity between the bodies and skins fascinated me. It was the first time that we were together in the streets. It was the first time that we claimed our places, our city, our country together. Actually, the parts I am reading are parts of my diary, and for some reason, when I write in my diary, I have I find the words very easily, which doesn't happen in real life usually.
Let's talk about this picture for a minute, because this is the picture that made me say, yes, I will
Yes.
write about Myriam's work. Let's talk about this picture for a bit. Tell us a bit.
So, I took this picture during the first days of the revolution. It was actually the first week. I was with my sister and her partner in the Grand Theater in downtown Beirut. And actually, I think that this picture and the context of this picture represents a lot everything that I'm trying to express and everything that you're mentioning. Because this Grand Theater was like it had a whole life. Like before the war, it used to like a lot of a lot of amazing people performed in this place, and then a lot of amazing artists. And then during the war, it was occupied. And after the war, it was occupied by Solidaire. It was controlled by Solidaire. And during the first days of the revolution, we just took back the space. We reappropriated the space, and we took this picture in the space. Yes.
It's like making your mark there, saying this revolution is ours. We now own this place, or if not owning, at least we now have a space within this space that we claim. Because when I contrasted in my essay about your work, I contrasted this picture with the picture of the two men,
Two men.
yeah, with the purple sky behind them. And what I loved about juxtaposing those two pictures together is this idea of powerful women and tender men, because I love the power of the desire in this picture. And I feel that you know, the primacy of the body and the way that you center the body in so much of your photography and the agency that you give bodies is really important. But the desire that comes across so clearly is also revolutionary. It's revolutionary for anywhere, but especially in the part of the world where we come from. It's revolutionary for women to have such powerful desire, and it's revolutionary for men to have tender desire. If we can go to the picture of the two men, is it coming up soon, Myriam, with the two men? Or something like this, you know?
I just want to say another thing about this. No, okay, I'm gonna go to the image because I don't want to interrupt you. It's supposed to be here. Yes.
Ah, this one, yes.
Are you talking about this one
Yes,
or
yes.
yes? Yes.
I love juxtaposing those two together because of the power and the tenderness of the desire in each one.
Yes. And yeah, you chose the words perfectly because this moment was a very tender moment, a very intimate moment. But actually, to go back to the other image, I think that also photographically speaking, it also joins everything we're saying, because you were saying that you were just saying that the images, and this is what I'm trying to do in my work also, give agency to the bodies in it. And so like it's not an easy image. And like we had a lot of conversations with my sister and her partner to see if we can publish the image, if like what does that mean, what does that mean for them, for in general, in yeah.
Because I really appreciate that you shared that, because you know, the danger of some photography that would try to portray this, and this is why I appreciate that it's you who did this, is that it would seep into voyeurism, and you are not voyeuristic in your photographs. You portray this power, this powerful desire in a very sensitive way, and the agency clearly lies in the subjects of your photograph here. And I wanted you to tell us, as well as you show other photographs in the series, especially what is ours, how you were able to respect the agency of your subjects, to enter into their embrace, because you're clearly there, you're very close, but to not disrespect them with a voyeurism that kind of, like, you know, points and gawks. That's not what you do. You say, look at this power. You don't say, ooh, look at this. You know, there's a big difference. And I think
Thank
that
you for
difference,
saying this.
yeah,
Yes.
well, see, the difference is because you are Lebanese, you are Myriam, you know your subjects, and your subjects trust you, and therefore allow you into their embrace, and their bodies become these very soft kind of like beings that you are equally soft to in return. And I love that cycle of that's your tenderness now, that you show so much love and tenderness to your subjects.
Actually, I think that as a person, I am I am not venting. I am all of these things you just said. But I think that I got conscious of all of it as a photographer during the revolution.
Mm.
And I became conscious of the power of an image during the revolution because, as I already said, before the revolution, I used to work with like very particular, very, yeah, fragments of the society. And here, suddenly, it was like everything was out there, everything was externalized. And it is like an image can be very dangerous. And yeah, for example, if I took a picture of someone in the street without asking their consent when they are not supposed to be in the street because of whatever, because for political reasons or for personal reasons, um, like I put them in danger. So even if the revolution was like the movement of the revolution was so fast, during the revolution, every time I would take a picture, I would say like, hey, I just took a picture of you. Can I have your contact to make sure that you're okay with this picture in particular and with every step of the way? And I think that the consent in photography is very linked also to what belongs to us because it's giving back agency and it's actually I forgot the name of the photographer, but yesterday I discovered a quote by a photographer that was saying um, it's fundamental and so important, the relationship between the conscious of your own body as a photographer and the body of the person you photograph and the body of the spectator, like this whole triangle. And yeah,
Yeah.
for me it's super important.
Well, you know, those words that you use, consent and agency, I believe are at the heart of the revolution, whether it's the political
Exactly.
revolution against the state, the social revolution against the tyrant on the street, or the personal sexual revolution against the tyrant in the bedroom and in the nightclub or wherever, or in the home. Because without consent and agency, there is no revolution. That's exactly what liberates us. So I'm so glad that, you know, those were exactly the words that you use.
Exactly, but and I think that consent in photography is as important as consent in any other encounter in life. Um, yeah, because as like in any encounter, it's a two-way relationship and a two-way world. So it's for me, and this is also something that became very important for me during the revolution. It became very important for me to I don't like the expression give a voice, but to listen to the story of the people in the pictures and not only to my story. Like, because before I used to kind of um, use photography to do a collage of what's the world in my head and the world outside of me. And I used to try to impose, not try to, I used to naturally impose my perspective on other people's bodies and faces, which is something important I learned during the revolution. Yeah,
That the revolution will do that. It will remind you that other people are there and they too are interested in liberation. And that's where
exactly.
that's
That's a
where we
very
go
good point.
the us and the them. It's like when does the us end and the them begins, and
Exactly.
do we have a revolution in common?
Exactly. And if I if I try to liberate myself, it will liberate the other and vice versa. And yeah.
Yeah. Shall we see more pictures?
Yes.
See, I love, can we stop here for a second? Because one of the things that I also highlight in my essay about your incredible photography is touch, you know? And I'm especially excited by your photographs because, you know, this pandemic, which has not finished, but, you know, so many of us, and we were considered lucky to be inside, you know, to work from home, to be under lockdown, to not have to be outside. But it also meant that for about 2 years, we were starved of touch. And
Mm.
touch is such an important human need. So
Yes.
while I was looking through your photographs, I was like, I was celebrating this. And, you know, the issue is called celebration. I was celebrating touch, and I was celebrating the power of touch, and I was reminiscing about why we need touch, and it's just so beautiful. It doesn't even matter who these people are, in a sense, because what they represent is this incredible celebration of the human body, and we've talked about the body, but how powerful it is to reach out and touch each other, which is why I mentioned the Depeche Mode, you know, reach out and
Yes,
touch faith from
yes, I
personal
love
Jesus.
this.
Because
I
they're
love this.
reaching out and touching each other, and through that touch we're like, wow, gosh, we really have missed each other, you know, as
Yes,
humans who need touch. And I love that about your
exactly.
pictures.
Thank you. And actually, I'm going to quote someone else, and of course, I forgot the name again. I think that at the end of the talk, I will like add all the references, like yeah, later. But there's this quote that I read before starting photography when I went like 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. It says like with photography, I caress you, and it was said like not in a pervert way at all, in the most tender way. And yeah, it's linked to this, and I think it's beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah.
celebration.
Definitely.
My friends and I used to take pictures naked in the streets of Beirut. It was our own way of reclaiming our streets and our bodies, everything that is supposed to be ours. So this was before the revolution. So we were already starting our own revolution, I think.
This is the sexual revolution that, you know, the
Yes,
title of my book
yes,
invokes, that your photography invokes, that I think this is now where, you know, as women, as queer people, as all the people who the revolution that is just against the state ignores, because the
yes.
revolution that is just against the state is not enough. The
Hmm.
revolution has to be about ownership of my body, my ability to be queer and to survive saying I'm queer, and to be able and to remind the men, all the men that we march with and that we rise up against with, that
Hmm.
this revolution belongs to us too. And they
Hmm.
have to know that.
Yes, yes.
And what I love about your photography as well, Miriam, and I'm so glad this picture came just in time, is that
Yes.
these men that I'm talking about, these men that I'm talking about who are part of the revolution, who do recognize that we too belong in the revolution and that the revolution belongs to us too.
Hmm.
In recognizing that, they recognize, and what your photography does is it shows what happens to cisgender men when they liberate themselves from what I call the tentacles of patriarchy, the tentacles that patriarchy uses to lock them into a certain definition of masculinity. And your photography your photography offers that liberation. It says, look how free you can be when you unchain yourself from what patriarchy tells you masculinity is. Let's talk
Like
about that
yeah,
for a bit.
it's not my role to do their revolution, but I'm giving them like some hints. Like you can go that way.
Yes, go and be free.
Yes.
Exactly. So tender men, powerful women and tender men.
Hmm. Yes. Talking about tender men, sweet, and then yeah, a kind of objectified woman on the shirt, but yes.
There's a lot to handle.
Exactly. So we're back here.
Yes. And and it's wonderful that we're back here, because one of the things that we also talked about was, you know, fucking. And I use that word intentionally because we
Yes.
discussed this when we were talking, you
Yes.
know, several weeks ago before I wrote the essay about your incredible work. Because, you know, for me as an Egyptian, you know, again with the revolution, and I survived an assault by riot police.
Yes.
And then we began to talk about it in Egypt in 2011. And then we began to talk about the trauma of the port explosion and various compounded traumas of, you know, our countries and the various wars in our histories and all of this. And I think that we agree on the power of fucking, and
Hmm.
actually saying it that way, about how our bodies need to fuck as a reminder of our survival and as our liberation. So talk to us about
Exactly.
that a bit.
And I think that I keep on saying this, but I think that again, it's all linked. Like, I think that by having sex, I think it's really a way of acknowledging your presence and in a way like taking space again right here, right now. And it's again like this thing of it's like partying, I think. Maybe it's a weird comparison, but it's like partying. It's like, yes, I'm still alive. Yes, I'm here. And this is what I want to do with my body. And I think that sex is I think it's the most tangible way of feeling this, of expressing this. And as you said, it's linked to touch, it's linked to connecting with other people and liberating with yourself with someone else. And yes.
Yeah, I think I told you I'm often accused of being obsessed with sex and being told things like
Oh,
it's not all
high
about
five.
sex. It is about sex. Let's all be obsessed with sex because sex contains, like you said, all that we've talked about: consent, agency, power, tenderness, queerness, and all the revolutions against the state, against the street, against the home. And I
Exactly.
want to use this idea of how it is about sex and we should obsess about sex by talking about one of the projects that you're working on now, because we've got about 2 or 3 more minutes before we open up for
Oh,
Q&A. And I
uh-huh.
wanted to talk about, um,
I'm gonna jump to the other project.
yes, I want you to go to
Yes,
the other project about
fast
sexual
forward.
fantasies. Yes.
Yes.
So I encourage everyone to go and look up Miriam's work, follow her on Instagram, and read the essay that I wrote about her. And especially because of this incredibly exciting project that she's working on now. And this is a project on sexual fantasies, right, Miriam?
Yes, yes. And thank
Excellent.
you for keeping track of time because I kind of have time blindness. So I thought we were still in the beginning of the conversation.
I could talk to you for hours, Miriam. One of these days we will. But tell us about the Sexual
Yeah.
Fantasies project.
So I'm super excited about this project, no pun intended. And so this is a project I've been wanting to work on for at least 7 years, at least like 10 years, something like this, since I discovered my own sexual fantasies. And so, okay, I'm trying to talk fast since you have only a few minutes. So, um, actually, okay, so as I said, I've been wanting to work on this for a few years, and last year, while I was dealing with the multiple traumas, I decided that I wanted to work on a project that exists in me independently from the current situation in Lebanon. So I was like, you should do it. You should, like, this is the time to do this. It felt right. And so what I did is that I made a very simple open call on Instagram that said, if you identify as a woman and you want to share your sexual fantasies, send me an email. So I received, and I keep on, like, I'm still receiving a lot of emails. And once I receive an answer, I, so the project is very binary in its form. It's text image for now. Um, and every time I receive an answer, I tell to the person, we're going to create an image, and it's a collaboration. So, how do you imagine this image? Do you want to be present in the image? If yes, how do you want to be photographed? What do you want to wear? What do you want to show or hide? Where do you want to be photographed? Talking about agency. And yes, again, I think that this project is really important for me because, again, I think that sexuality, our sexualities are not a playground, but a context in which we, like so many things, there is so many things to explore. So through sexual fantasies, through our sexual fantasies, we explore much more actually. Yes, and it's for me, it's mainly a way of talking about what's ours, and this is a good way of answering. Yeah, for me, this project is a way of taking back what belongs to us, taking back, talking ourselves about our own bodies and our own sexuality. And yeah, yes, no need to say that our sexuality have been dictated by the male gaze. So yes, this is
Of course. So
after
you're
all this conversation, yeah, it's obvious.
absolutely, again, it's the power of your gaze, it's the consent and agency, it's the power of desire for your subjects who identify as women. And it's such a beautiful fruition of all the stages of your work that you've taken us through, you know, like from nightlife to tenderness to what is ours to now to sexual fantasies, because it's kind of like the revolution gaining speed, you know, you start underground and then
Yes,
you use tenderness and that kind of the power of desire, and then you're out on the streets for the revolution, and here you are now, the sexual revolution, because this
yes.
this is truly liberating for all of us, and I'm so excited about your project.
Thank you. And just another thing, you mentioned many times the revolution, the fact that the revolution brought tender men. Actually, last week I did an open call again, and I forgot to mention, um, like, if you identify as a woman, and I had so many men who answered saying that they are interested, and I was so happy about this. And I'm thinking that at some point, when I'll be ready, I should explore this too.
Absolutely, because you know, part of the revolution, as we've said several times while looking at your pictures, especially of, you know, male presenting bodies, is that it liberates men from the tentacles of especially toxic masculinity wherever they are, not just in our part of the world, but it liberates men to make of masculinity what they want rather than what patriarchy tells them they should
Yes,
want.
yes, definitely. Mona, thank you so much. I love how you understand my work.
I love your work, and I love how your work, because for years, Miriam, I'm like, the revolution has to be about our bodies and about sex. And yes, I'm obsessed with sex. And then I saw your photography and I was like, this is the revolution that I have been waiting for. So it's a pleasure, Miriam. I'm so, so delighted to know you now and to have written about your work. It's been an honor and a thrill. And I hope we have lots of questions that meet the challenge of your work, because it's a beautiful challenge.
And there's no need to say that your work is also one of the it's many revolutions. So yeah, you know this, and I already said it so many times. So yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, this was incredible listening to the two of you converse about these incredible photographs. We have a few comments in the chat that I'll refer to here. Just first off, and that I think you would like to hear. Sheena McFarlane says, excellent point about overcoming the internal tyrant. It's something common to women on a global scale still. Beautiful work. What a great pairing of Myriam and Mona. Someone else said, yes, the inner tyrant. And was very successfully bringing consent into your photography. We have a question here. I love that you ask permission after shooting a picture, but does it affect your shooting, slow you down, or change how you move?
It definitely does affect my way of taking pictures, but it affects it in the best way, I think. Yeah. Do you want me to talk about it?
Does anybody else have any questions? That was the only actual question. Here's one from Michael. How do you consider the experience of your work, which is so physical, in terms of presentation platforms, Instagram as an interactive space versus exhibition versus the printed page?
That's a very interesting question, and I think that it's also linked to everything we've been saying. Honestly, I feel like my work can be presented in many different ways, and for me, it is important to present it in many different ways on Instagram, because Instagram is like something that you don't have to like curate in a way. You just put it out there as it's like a diary. on Instagram, in newspapers, in books, and in exhibitions too, because actually, and also most of all, I think that in like when it reaches public spaces, I think it's very interesting because for me, like a very important part of photography is how we communicate with people, and photography is like it's more accessible than words, for me at least. It's something that you see, and even if it's layered, you feel something, like it caresses you anyway. Um, and for me, it's very important to communicate what I'm trying to express to different people in different spaces. And we go back to the idea of taking space in many ways and many forms. Yes.
Jennifer, there are a couple of questions under Q&A that people have posted.
I just saw those. Thank you. Could you repeat or elaborate on your use of Flash?
Yes, of course. So I started using the Flash very, very early, around 10 years ago. And for me, it's a way of making things real and present, and it gives texture to things, to to life. And I always use the direct flash. And as I said, it's also a way of literally putting the light on things that are normalized when they um yeah, yeah. Do you have another question about the flash? I don't know who asked the question.
No, but I love how you did talk about how it brings things into light that maybe weren't there. And I think that that really shows through in your photographs. There's another question. Can you please discuss how you became the first Middle Eastern woman to join Magnum and how that has changed your life and your career?
Ooh, okay. So I think that it's like a lot of an addition of events that happened, and but concretely, when the revolution started, there is Peter from Magnum who messaged me, and he told me that he told me that he saw my images. That was the first step, and then he happened to be in Beirut, and so we bumped into each other during the revolution in the streets. And he told me to apply to ADPP, which is the Arab Documentary Photography Program, which is amazing. If there are Arab photographers out there, you should definitely apply. And then he was a mentor on this program, and he became my mentor. And on the last day of the program, he told me, he asked me if I wanted to join, if I wanted to apply, and I did, and it worked. Yes, and it's actually affecting me a lot. The first thing is that there are some of my favorite photographers ever in Magnum, so being in contact with them is huge for me. But also, as it's linked to your question, Michael, and my answer to your question, um, Magnum has a different audience, a very big audience, so it's a way of reaching more people and different people. Yes. And yeah, as a photographer in general, and of course, as you said, as an Arab woman, I think it's important to have this perspective.
There's a comment here by Sheena McFarlane. I think Myriam, with her work on Instagram, has created an important and powerful community for women around the world, and hopefully men, tender ones too.
Sheena, I'm happy to know you're here. We met on Instagram, so yes.
I think maybe we can, that seems to be all the questions. If you would like to say anything in closing, either of you.
I would love to close with Myriam choosing a photograph that she wants us to take away from our discussion today, because I know you had lots of other photographs you wanted to show. So if there is one particular photograph you want to end our conversation with, please do.
I think that it's the addition of the images that is important for me. And I think that you chose the perfect images that that go well with what we are trying to say.
Mhm.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Well, I have a very brief question that I think we can answer, or you can answer rather, because we've got like 4 or 5 minutes left. Has anything that came for your new project, Sexual Fantasies, surprised you?
Um, so many things are surprising me, and I think this is why I do my projects, because I have the need to do them, and at the same time I need to find myself in other people and to find other answers in other people. I need to be surprised. So, so there are so many things that are surprising me. But one thing that is really surprising me is that when I started the project, I was expecting to find my sexual fantasies in some answers, and I found so many different sexual fantasies. And I think that this says a lot about our different sexualities as women. Yes.
I'm very excited about this project. So wherever you take it, ask them, can Mona write about it? Because she would love to.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Myriam. It's been a real pleasure, always.
Thank you. Thank you. Really. Really.
Oh, thank you all. And like we said, this will be recorded and on the APAD website and on our YouTube channel. So thank you all so much for the great conversation. It was fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you for this space. Yes. Mona, thank you again so much.
Of course, Myriam, it was a true pleasure. You know I love your work, so anytime.
And I love the fact that every time you mention my work, you said incredible before.
Because it is.